Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on Refill with Preach Sista. It is another beautiful day here in West Michigan, and I'm excited for what we're going to get to do today. So, as you know, I'm your host, Michelle Lloyd Page, and twice a month, I invite a guest to join me in studio for conversations about wellness, well-being, and how to replenish our souls. And there's lots of ways that you can get in touch with us. And so this is why I'm showing the slide right now. You can get in touch with us on our website, on our Instagram account, on our Refill with Preach Sista Facebook page, our regular Facebook page, YouTube, our Bible study, and a newsletter. So we are pretty accessible. With these shows, what I enjoy is that everyone is a little bit different, but each show offers helpful strategies to help us think about how we replenish our energy and our joy and our light so that we can be our best selves and show up for whatever it is we have planned for the day. So with these shows, there's probably going to be a little mishap every now and then, and that's because we do these shows live. So you probably noticed we didn't have our regular Refill logo that's up, but that's okay. It's good. We're not perfect, and that is okay. I'm glad that you're here with us. If your spiritual, emotional cup is a little less than full and you need a refill, you are in the right place to refill with Preach Sista. I'm so excited for our guest today. Our guest is the fabulous Kieychia Likely, and I'm going to bring her in as soon as I get this. Here we go. I had to figure out, whoa. Oh yeah, we are live. So, Kieychia, thank you so much for being a part of the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And, I wanted to have you because we have been having some conversations about just feeling our best selves. And so, and measures that we're taking, measures that you are now taking to be your best self. So can you tell us what makes you feel like you are your best self, or what inspires you?
The thing that inspires me is really being a servant. When I'm able to pour into other people, when I'm able to help other people, when I'm able to walk with other people, that actually gives me motivation and energy and inspires me. When I can be part of somebody's journey, that means the world to me. And so that gives me life. That gives me the energy that I need to keep pressing forward.
It sounds like, to have that kind of perspective, I suspect that somebody was probably that for you at one time in your life. And so that's so good to hear that in a way you're paying it forward by pouring into other people. And your day job is one that you have opportunities to pour into a lot of people, pouring into a lot of people. So I'm glad that you have that opportunity, and not just because of your day job. You work with college students, but also your family as well, because you are a fabulous wife. I know you're a fabulous wife because I know your husband treats you really well.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
And I know he speaks so highly of you. And I appreciate that, because for me, there's always a bit of sadness when I hear of a couple that can't speak well of one another. So I'm always inspired by couples who can speak well of one another and who can be present for one another, because that doesn't always happen. So thank you for being that kind of a role model and inspiration for me. Even though I do believe Daryl and I have been married longer than the two of you, still, that's inspiring to see other couples, to know that, okay, we're not doing this kind of work all by ourselves. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
But with all that you do, right? You have a day job that keeps you pretty busy. You're a wife, you're a mom, and you're also involved a great deal in the church as well. So you have multiple hats.
Yes.
How do you know when you need a refill?
That's a good question. I'm a firm believer that your body will tell off on you, right? And so with me having 4 kids at home, one in college, but I consider him at home because he's home every weekend, right? Um, and two dogs, a turtle named Leon, a fish named DJ, and then a job. And then ministry work. It gets kind of chaotic. It gets crazy.
Mhm.
You constantly keep your track shoes on because you're running from one thing to the next. And I've learned, especially this year with COVID, that it is so important to listen to your body.
Mm.
I necessarily have not done a good job in the past. So I have lupus, and I tend to function like I don't have lupus, which is not the best thing, right?
No, it's not a good idea to do that.
It's terrible. It's terrible. And so what I've learned with COVID, because COVID made the world, but personally, it made me slow down in areas I needed to slow down in. And so I
Mhm.
really became very intentional about listening to my body and watching for those signs that my tiredness was coming on. And I call it
Mm.
tiredness because when you have lupus, your joints, your muscles, your energy level dips. And so I really, really began to pay attention to those signs and say, okay, stop, Kieychia. You need a moment. And
Mm.
really taking that moment, because when you're a mom, you go nonstop. And my kids are 19, 13, 8, and 7. So it's nonstop party 24 hours a day, literally. And so just really stopping and saying, I need to pour into myself so that I'm able to pour into others when that time comes. But I have to take care of my star player. And my star player is me. Because if your
Mhm.
star player is not together, you can't help the team.
Right. And I know you just said that it was like this year during COVID that you really, that really kind of sunk in a little bit. What was it that helped you to realize that taking care of your star player itself is really important?
Mhm. I think with being at home full time and having everybody in the house all at the same time, you
Mhm.
notice two things. You notice that your house is not big as you thought it was when you bought it. It's actually way smaller. And then you notice that it's nonstop. So those breaks that you may get by going away to work, or those breaks that you may get to go away to church out of your house, you're in your home full time. And so it gives you an opportunity to really sit down with yourself. COVID gave me an opportunity to deal with Kieychia in a way that I've never had the time or frankly the energy to do. And
Mm.
so it really made me become in tune with me and what I need outside of being a mom, what I need outside of being a professional, what I need outside of being a wife, and really deal with what Kieychia needs to be that whole person. What I preach to students at Calvin, becoming your whole self. I really had to take my own medicine and say, what do you need?
Mm. Yeah. So what were some of those things that you did when you asked yourself the question, what do I need? Not what do my kids need? What does my job need? What does the turtle need?
Right.
But what do I need? What were some of those practices that helped you to fill that need?
Mhm. So it would start off real simple. I needed to be able to go get coffee by myself.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. That is so good, right? Because that is such a simple thing.
Yes, by myself. As something as minute as that, I didn't need a dog jumping in the car. I didn't need a kid about to kill themselves trying to run down the stairs to get in. I needed to go alone. I needed that drive alone. I needed a minute before I come back in the house to sit in my driveway and have a couple sips by myself. I needed pockets of solitude. And so it would start off like that. And then it took me having a very honest conversation with my husband. And I'm so grateful
Mm.
that I have the type of husband that I do that actually cares and he hears me. And there's a difference between listening and intentional listening. And I'm very
Mm.
grateful that I have a husband who intentionally listens to the words that come out of my mouth. And I said to
Kaisha,
him,
unpack that a little bit about the difference between listening and intentional listening.
so for me, listening is I hear you and that's it.
Mm. Okay.
Intentional listening is I hear you, Your pain is my pain. Your struggle is my struggle. And we're in this together no matter what it looks like.
Okay.
Me recognizing that it may not hurt me directly or it may not impact me directly, but I recognize that indirectly, because I care for you the way that I do, it affects me.
Oh, that is so good. I'm so glad I asked you that question, because I think that makes all the difference. That makes all the difference between, as you said, someone who's listening. I mean, and they're listening because their ears work and their ears shot and they can hear you.
Right.
But does it make a difference
Right.
what they've heard? And so what you've just described is that when your husband was listening and watching, observing you, it mattered to him. So it made a difference. It was registering. It was clicking.
Right.
He got it. Just like, oh, no. I need to take care of my queen. I need to take care of Kieychia.
Yeah. And so it took me having a conversation with him and me being very vulnerable and saying, I need a minute. And that's all I could describe it as. I need a minute. I need a minute to just be me. I don't want to be mom. I don't want to be wife. I just want to be Kieychia. I need a minute. I feel like I'm losing myself.
That is so good that he could hear that and that he didn't get defensive.
Right.
But started thinking about, okay, how can I make this happen? How can I create these moments for you so that you can hang on to who you are? Well, and I'm pretty sure he had a vested interest, right? Because he married you because of who you are,
right? So this was important to him. This was important to him because this affects his life too, right?
Right.
And so he's like, all right, we got to get this together. What do you need? And I said, I just need a minute. I don't know what that looks like, but I need a minute. And so he started creating those minutes for me. Sometimes it would look like, you go do this. I got the kids. I don't want to see you for a couple hours here.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And then when COVID restrictions started to lift, I'd wake up. He'd say, let's go, pack a bag. We just did this week. I had no idea. Babysitter in place and everything. And he's like, I'm taking you away overnight. Let's go.
Wow. Nice. Nice.
Just pockets to where I can just breathe, because life in general is crazy and chaotic. And so what it does is it gives me a chance to refill my cup. It gives me a chance to, if I just want to do a jump up and down on a hotel bed and see if I can touch my toes, I can do that without being judged, right? I can drink 40 cups of coffee if I want to, and then complain that my stomach hurts. It just gives me an opportunity to just be me. It gives me an opportunity to look at my husband in a different way too. Because when you have a husband that's in ministry, when you have a husband that works full time and has and he's working on his second PhD, he's just as busy as I am. It gives me a chance to reconnect with him on a level and say, that's why I fell in love with you.
That is so nice. As I'm hearing you talk, my daughter also does a relationship podcast. And it's like, okay, you and I need to be on their podcast. It's so refreshing. So, okay, I'm going to pull that back. I'm going to stay in my own lane right now. But
it's little things that matter. I decided 18 days ago that I was going vegan, and I went cold turkey vegan. And so I said to him, I'm done. I'm going vegan. I want to see if this helps my lupus, because when the weather shifts, I have extreme joint pains, inflammation, you name it, it happens. And I have never felt better. Now he could have said, hey, that's your thing. You rock that out. But he said, all right. He says, I will commit to at least 2 to 3 vegan meals a week. But when a brother needs his steak, I'll go get my steak. I had to respect that.
Well, my husband is the same way. He is so supportive. He is the most creative vegan cook that I know. He'll look at something and he will try to figure out, okay, how can I veganize this for Michelle? But he will say every now and then, it's like, look, I just need some bacon. It's like, so if you need to take a drive, I'm just giving you a heads up at 2:00. I'm gonna cook some bacon. I'll open all
Right.
the windows and the doors so the smell won't be in the
Yes.
house when you come in. But it's like, okay, like you said, I have to respect that.
Hmm.
That's who you are. You're not trying to make me eat it. You're not
Right.
trying to sabotage anything. You're not saying,
Exactly.
hey, I made you some vegan sausage gravy. And yeah, I just
Yep.
added a little bit of something in there because what's is going to hurt you. He
Yep.
doesn't do that, but it makes all the difference in the
It
world. So
makes all the difference. So, I mean, he is the grocery shopper of our house. Thank the Lord for that, because
mhm.
I cannot be trusted to grocery shop for the family. Meals will never go together. I can cook them when they're in the house, but as far as going to the store and getting them, that's a different story. So he has been slowly switching out things in the house to make it a little easier for me. This week he made vegan sweet potato pies for me, and
Mm,
so when you have that extra layer of support and you have somebody that really is your biggest cheerleader, that matters. Because
yes.
just as big of a cheerleader as he is for me, I am his number one fan.
Oh, that is awesome. That is so refreshing and so good to hear. So as you've been diving in and having these small practices and a
Mhm.
big practice, going vegan is cold turkey is a big step to say,
Mhm.
okay, I'm just going to switch it. It's things are easier now to do that because there's
Right.
lots of resources that are out there. And if you know someone who's, doing a vegan show,
Right.
that's good too.
It
But
pays to have friends who are already vegan.
yeah, it's case to have friends who are already vegan. So what types of things would you recommend to people? If people were saying, Kieychia, whether it's the going vegan or it is just understanding the value of taking care of yourself. Have there been books that you have read that help affirm that, yes, it's important to take care of yourself, or podcasts or things that you're listening to? What are some of those resources that you would recommend to people?
Mhm. So a couple things. I read a book years ago, over 10 years ago, um, that is more relevant in my life now than it ever has been. Um,
Okay.
it's Boundaries, the book Boundaries by Henry Cloud and
Oh, yes.
John Townsend.
Yeah.
Uh, and creating boundaries is part of a refill process. It's part of a resource for you taking care of you. Because oftentimes we get into situations or relationships, and it doesn't have to be man-woman relationship, just relationships in general, that
Mhm.
you feel like you are pouring more out than you're getting in. And so
Mhm.
creating healthy boundaries to where you are not overextended, you have the liberty and feel empowered, equipped, and encouraged to say no, and no, that's okay. Um,
Mm.
being able to take those steps for self-preservation, really, because if you're honest about it, that's what it is. You are trying to preserve yourself, because we have to save some of us for us.
Yes. Yes. I mean, because if we pour ourselves completely out,
Mhm,
it's like someone had said on this before, and it's an example that I like to use. When you have your car
mhm.
gas indicator, if you know your car well enough, it's like, okay, it says E, but I know I can
Right.
drive on fumes for about a
Mhm.
block or so. You can only do that so long because
Right.
even after a while, the fumes are going to say, no, mm-mm.
Mhm.
There's nothing here,
Right.
and you will do harm to your car.
Mhm.
It's not just, oh man, the car won't move, but no, you can do harm to your car in trying to drive it like that. And if you don't have to, if you keep giving and giving and giving, you don't have anything left for
Exactly.
yourself. And if you don't have anything left for yourself, you can't be present
Mm-mm.
things that are important to you. Or if you are present, you're not your best self.
Right.
You're not your best self.
Exactly.
And that's not the place that you want to be. We
Right.
always want to be our best self when we're showing up.
Right.
Yeah. So, Kaisha, it sounds like you have learned a lot over time. And as you look back, as you think of your 20-year-old self, your
Yeah.
your fabulous 20-year-old self, what what would you tell your 20-year-old self or your younger self? It doesn't have to be 20. 20 is just a good number because not quite recognized as fully an adult. Sometimes that is before major life events have happened.
Mhm.
It's kind of a time when we think we know everything
Right? And know nothing.
and know nothing at all. Not what we don't know what we think that we know.
Mhm.
So looking back from, where you are now, having an understanding of who you are, not yet not yet fully having reached your potential because you're still a youngster. You haven't
Well,
reached
thank
your
you.
full potential yet. What would you tell your 20-year-old self or your younger self?
That's a good one. I've oftentimes wrestled with that question because there's so many things I would tell my 20-year-old self. The number one thing I would tell myself is to not be afraid.
Mm,
Oftentimes, I let opportunities go by, um, or wouldn't lean into certain things because fear got in the way.
okay.
My 20-year-old self really, really weighed down by the what ifs.
Okay.
And so I spent too much time in my head, which caused me not to produce the actions that I needed to produce. So I would definitely tell myself to trust myself a little bit more. I was very unsure about myself at 20. I really didn't know myself at 20. And looking at myself now versus then, they're two different people.
Hmm.
Um, I know that I know that I know now that I know who I am, and I can stand on that without wavering.
Okay.
20, I wasn't so sure.
Okay.
And I would allow myself to live a little bit. I was very, very cautious at 20, and I didn't live as much as I should have.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I was the kid in college that um, everybody else would go out, and I'd be in bed by 9.
Yeah, you need to tell
I was
that
worried
20-year-old
about what my
self.
mom would think if she called that phone and I didn't answer it. And we
Okay.
were in 2 different cities. So I
This
was
is before cell phones. This is
yeah,
before cell
this
phones.
is before this is when it was in a bag in the
Yeah.
car.
Oh, you had a
It was
bag in the
just
car.
good.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah, I was before that time.
yes. And so I didn't trust myself enough. I wasn't for sure of myself.
Mm,
Um, and if I'm honest about it, I really didn't like myself. When I looked
okay.
in the mirror, I couldn't I couldn't get with what I saw.
Okay. What helped you to get to the point that you could say, I like myself, I love myself?
Mhm. I had to learn who I was, and my identity was wrapped up in who people wanted me to be and not
Mm.
who I desired to be. And so I was
Oh, wow.
constantly striving for what the expectation was and not putting myself first,
Oh, wow. That's golden right there. That's golden.
which forced me to where I looked in the mirror and I wasn't sure of who I saw. I saw a person, but I didn't
Mhm.
know that person. And so I had to go through a rediscovery of who I was on down to simple things of, are you eating pizza because you've always eaten pizza, or are you eating pizza, Kieychia, because you actually like I had
Okay.
to sit with myself on that level and figure out who I was.
Wow, that is good. And and I'm so appreciative that you brought out even the small things like, why am I eating this?
Mhm.
Am I eating this because so and so told me to eat it? It's what's here, it's cheap, it's available, or do I actually like it? Do I like this?
Mhm.
That reminds me of something um, when I was going into undergraduate work, going to college, and my mother and I were very, very close, very close. And I lived close enough to, I went to Calvin for my undergraduate. I lived close enough to Calvin that I could have driven there every day. It would have just been a 20-minute commute. And my mother said, no, you are going to live on campus because you need to find out who you really are. Not just, I don't want you to be a mini me because I want to recreate me in
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
because we are so much alike. She said, I need you to know for yourself who you are.
Mhm.
And she needed to know for herself who she was as
Mhm.
well, right? As can she, what is her life like without hanging out with me all the time? And I had to figure
Right.
out what was my life like without hanging out with her all the time, being
Mhm.
able to make some decisions and trust some of those decisions. But I was so appreciative of her saying that. And that's something I practiced with my own kids when it was time for them to go to school. It's like, no, you need to go. I don't care how close to home you live. You need to live on campus so that you can be you and not just doing things because this is the way we do things at the house.
Mhm.
Yeah, that is that's important. That's important. Um when I'm what I guess one other thing that I would ask, because I saw it pop up in the comment when you had mentioned that you were vegan, so I said, "Yay, vegan, plant based." Uh, what is the biggest lesson that you have learned by going vegan and plant based?
So I've learned two lessons. One, despite what we think in our heads, we really don't need meat. You will not die. You will not die. I had to get over because I'm like, oh, I don't know how this. You have reservations when you're learning new things, and there's your head. You're in your head and you're thinking, am I gonna
Yeah.
die if I don't
Mhm.
eat meat? You're not gonna die. And the other thing that I've learned is by going vegan, you actually have more energy.
Okay.
Um, I feel healthier, and I don't crave sweets the way I did. I don't crave junk the way I did.
Oh wow. See, I didn't get that part. I got the feeling better. I got the don't need meat to live, but yeah, that don't crave sweet. Well, I should rephrase that. If I am telling myself that I'm being really intentional about what I'm going to eat, that I'm going to eat, be a healthy vegan, then I
Mhm.
don't crave sweets. It's
Mhm.
just when I get into that, um, well, I'm vegan, but it's been a stressful day, so it's not going to be the most healthy vegan. So I discovered the Twizzlers and the
Mhm.
Oreo cookies and the kettle cooked potato chips, which are all vegan, all
Mhm.
vegan. Um, and I know myself that that when I eat those, that I will crave more of those. So I
Mhm.
have to give myself room or some flexibility to say, okay, it's today. Today
Right.
is the day that I'm going to eat that.
Right.
And know that tomorrow or 2 days from now, whenever I feel like, okay, I'm ready to stop that for a while. But it's again kind of it's giving myself permission as well as
Yeah.
creating some boundaries as well. It's like,
And I've
okay,
learned that
what?
seasonings are everything, right? So
Oh
it,
yes,
it's not the meat that I was craving. I think it's the seasonings that come with
it's
the meat.
the seasonings.
And so I'm
Yes.
learning that it has
Hmm.
nothing to really do with the meat itself. It's the seasonings
It's the
that go with
flavor.
it. Mhm.
Yes, it's the season, and oftentimes it's the seasoning of the meat, right?
Yeah.
It's that flavor profile, not so much the meat. The meat is just a carrier of
Right.
that flavor profile, right? So
Mhm.
if chopping up onions and garlic, love garlic, onions and garlic and celery and all that to add to it. And I've discovered more seasonings. Before it was salt, pepper, cinnamon was my own, really the only only seasonings that I was using. Now I have a whole cabinet of seasonings that I have discovered and I'm using just to add that punch. Fennel seeds are my favorite go-to because it
Mhm.
adds that smoked salt.
Yes.
Is something that I really enjoy. It helps give that kind of flavor to it
Mhm.
that I was looking at.
And I've been
Well,
watching on Facebook a woman by the name of Tabitha Brown,
mhm,
and she's a vegan and she cooks.
mhm,
And some of the seasonings that she recommends as well has been really, really helpful, like liquid smoke, black salt,
yes,
because that tastes like
mhm,
egg. Um,
yes.
and so
I
Amazon has delivered a box every day this week. Um,
Oh, I have black salt now because I'm going to try those deviled eggs that you were
they
telling
were
me
so
about.
good. They were so
I
good.
Yeah, I've got them. I've got everything upstairs. That's my project today to work on, and I want to thank you for that.
No
Well,
problem.
Kieychia, this has been an enjoyable conversation. I am so glad that our paths have crossed.
Yes,
I am inspired by the way that you pour into people at work, outside of work, your family. As I said, your your marital relation with your husband just inspires me because it's like, yes, that's a picture of what a relationship can be like. And so even for someone who's been married a little longer than you, it's like, oh, we're not the only ones who do things, who do things like that. And so that's inspiring. I want to thank you so much for being our guest. This will not be the last time that you are our guest on Refill with Preach Sister, because you're still on a learning journey. I'm still on a learning journey, and we can learn from each other. Thank you so much for
absolutely.
sharing your
Thank you so
story.
much for having me.
Oh, yeah. And to all our listeners, I already did the end credits before, but I will put them up again so that you can see them. So if, there are multiple ways that you can connect with us on Preach Sister, find us on our website. That's the best way to find out all things that are going. And go to the website, because we have information up about our conference that's coming up. Our Fresh Anointing Conference will be virtual this year. So go to the website to find all of that out. Pretty soon, we'll also have t-shirt information and our conference box information. So look for that coming up. And so we just want to say thank you for being a part of us. And we look forward to seeing you next time. And until the next time, we encourage you to keep the faith and to care for your souls. I'm Michelle Lloyd Page, and this has been Refill with Preach Sister.